Hello, Body of Messiah. Now we're entering into the seventh lesson called the WHI, which represents the whole house of Israel. Today we're going to cover the people group called the Egyptians. And as I mentioned in the previous lesson, we're going to start taking these people groups that are viewed as being forever antagonistic against the Hebrew people or the nation of Israel. And we're going to start to see that that's not always the case when it comes to these people groups. You have some that align themselves with the Hebrew people and the descendants of Israel. And then you have those that are, yes, they are antagonistic. But what I'm going to continue to do is show by digging deep into the scriptures and Torah and looking at the Egyptian people. I'm going to further show how they're intertwined sometimes with the Hebrew people and the nation of Israel. As you can see, I got my camera pointed up, kind of upward, so we can get part of the biblical heritage chart. I'm going to continue along the line of showing how throughout the Torah, descendants of Ham and Shem intermarried with one another and cohabitated with one another. And as you can see, Mizraim, who is Egypt, this is Mizraim. This represents the Egyptian people. They're direct descendants of Ham. There is a mentality, a lie that's going out there, and a mentality that some black and brown Hebrew descendants have, where they're saying that the Hamitic people are totally different and separate from the Shemitic or Semitic people. And this cannot be true if we look at the Torah. If we're going to worship God in Ruach and in truth, His word shows that that is contrary to God's word. That the Hamitic and the Shemitic people continuously intermarried with one another and had children with one another. So to start, we need to turn to Genesis chapter 12. In Genesis chapter 12 is where Abraham, Father Abraham, and then Sarah is going down into Egypt. And before they go down into Egypt, Abraham tells Sarah, please don't tell these people that you're my wife. Tell these people that you're my sister. See, Abraham was very fearful that once they entered the kingdom of Egypt, that people would see how beautiful Sarah was, and that some people might want to attack him or kill him and take Sarah if they realized that she was his wife. And so he told a half truth by saying that she was his sister. And that is halfway true, because Sarah and Abraham share the same father. They both had a father named Terah, but they had different mothers. So lo and behold, as they entered the kingdom of Egypt, the servants of Pharaoh came and saw how beautiful she was, and they took her into the palace. And then they began to shower Abraham with gifts. They gave him silver and gold, cattle and sheep. They also gave him Egyptian male servant, Egyptian female servants. So these Egyptian servants came under the household of Abraham. To make a long story short, Pharaoh's household is hit with a plague. And Pharaoh realizes that, oh my goodness, this woman is actually Abraham's wife, not his sister. And so what the Pharaoh does is say to Abraham and Sarah, please get out and leave, basically. And he sends Abraham on off with all that he had given him. And so here is where we realize that there were Egyptian servants under Abraham, under his household from that point on. Okay? The next time when we encounter an intertwining of the descendants of Abraham along with the Egyptian people is when we look in Genesis chapter 16. In Genesis chapter 16, Sarah is urging her husband Abraham to marry her Egyptian maidservant Hagar and to have a child with her. Because at this point, Sarah is still barren. God has not opened up her womb yet. And so Abraham obliges and he marries Hagar and he impregnates her. And they have a son named Ishmael. So Ishmael is part Egyptian and part Hebrew. So here we see where Ishmael, and I've said it over and over again, should have been taught in the same customs that Abraham would teach any of his sons. He's the patriarch. But the European mindset tries to teach us continuously. They try to say things like Ishmael is forever against the descendants of Israel because he was antagonistic against Isaac. And so we notice that with that mindset in the Bible, we're only taught about Abraham, Sarah, and then their son Isaac, the son of promise, which God continued the covenant through, and then his sons, Esau and Jacob, and mainly Jacob. That's what we're taught from. The other sons of Abraham are not mentioned. It's as if they're cast off and they're not thought about, or they're non-factor. But if you turn to Genesis chapter 21 and look specifically at verse 13, this is the point in which Sarah feels that Ishmael may place Isaac's life in jeopardy. And so she urges Abraham to put Hagar and Ishmael outside of the camp, send them away, because she feared that Ishmael would hurt Isaac. And God is telling Abraham to listen to her. Abraham is very grieved because he loves his son. No matter what anyone says, this is his child, his first son. So even though Abraham is fully aware that God is going to bless him and continue the covenant through Isaac, still he loves Ishmael. And to console him, God says to him, don't worry. Also, the son that you've had by the slave woman, I'm going to bless into being a great nation because he is also your seed. Okay? So Ishmael was never cast off. God still is blessing him into being a great nation because specifically he is Abraham's seed. And God says that in Genesis chapter 21 and verse 13. So that means the other children by Abraham, besides Isaac, which are the 6 sons by Keturah, they're also Abraham's seed. So God didn't cast them to the wayside. Remember, God made a covenant with Abraham. And he said that his descendants are going to number the stars in the sky, the sands of the sea. The sands on the seashore. And so he's not going to cast away these other who are also Abraham's seeds. So we need to eliminate that mindset, European mindset, that these other descendants are cast to the wayside. Yes, there is a son that the covenant is being kept through. Yes, it's going to continue through Isaac. But these other descendants are not just cast by the wayside. Okay? What I'm going to do now is kind of move the camera so I can get a full view, because I need to include the lower portion of the biblical heritage chart. So bear with me for a moment. Okay? So here, we're going to move on and look down at the descendants of the nation, the tribes of Israel. You see Jacob, who is also known as Israel. The next time that we encounter the Egyptian people and that they're intertwined with the descendants of Israel is when you turn to Genesis chapter 41 and you look at verses 44 through 55. Here, Joseph is second in the kingdom of Egypt. And he's given a wife. Her name is Asenath. And they marry. And they have 2 sons. You might have heard of the half tribes in Israel. And his 2 sons are the half tribes. He has a son named Ephraim and a son named Manasseh. So here we see, with Joseph being made second in the kingdom of Egypt, that he marries an Egyptian woman and has 2 sons. So this further proves that the descendants of Israel sometime intermingled with the Egyptian and had children by them. So we're going to move on even further down in scripture, because I want to show you even more so that after Joseph's time, we're going to go on further down 430 years, where at this point in time, there's a Pharaoh that did not remember any of the good works that Joseph had done for the Egyptian kingdom. And this Pharaoh becomes very harsh in his treatment of the nation of Israel. And so the Egyptian people began to also fear the descendants of Israel because they became so great in number. And that Pharaoh also knew that there was a prophecy that the nation of Israel would be delivered from up under their oppression. And so this Pharaoh basically had killed, a lot of the children, the male children, by throwing them into the Nile River to be eaten by alligators and drowning them. But God spared Moshe. So I want to show that at the point in time in the book of Exodus, when we look in Exodus chapter 12, there's another intermingling that happened between the Egyptian people and the nation of Israel. We're at the point in the Bible where the 10 plagues has occurred to the Egyptian kingdom and almost totally destroyed it. And after the 10th plague, it says specifically in Exodus chapter 12, verse 38, it says that when the nation of Israel went up from the kingdom of Egypt, there was also a mixed multitude with the nation of Israel. A mixed multitude meaning that there were Egyptians who left along with the nation of Israel. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had saw 10 plagues, hey, even if I had got to plague number 4 and 5, I would be like, I am team nation of Israel. Your God is going to be my God, and I'm going to worship your God because your God is the master of the universe. You see, through these 10 plagues, God was showing all the children of Israel and even the Egyptians that your idols are worthless. They're not going to help you because I set things into play. And so through these 10 plagues, God was bringing salvation to the people and opening their eyes and showing them that all of your pagan practices can't help you. And he reinforced that fact to the nation of Israel, that I'm your shield and I'm your protector. So that mixed multitude, you better believe, included some Egyptians that followed the nation of Israel out into the wilderness. So when people, I'm so troubled nowadays when I hear about brown and black Hebrews today who are engaging in some practices, the pagan practices of old from the ancient Egyptians. Now, the ancient Egyptians, when you look at them, you look at their hieroglyphics, the ancient Egyptians were African people. They were not white. They were not Arab. If you go and look at lesson 4 of biblical racial reconciliation, I share a lesson that's titled Stop Whitewashing the Descendants of Ham. And in there, I give you a clear picture based on the hieroglyphics, based on the Egyptian sculptures, and a tribe in Africa called the Beja tribe, Beja. These people, you can see by their hairstyle, their facial features, their skin tones. They are the true descendants of ancient Egypt. And with that being said, what troubles me the most when I see some Hebrews that are going back to those pagan practices is, do you not see what God did to the Egyptian kingdom? He's trying to reinstill the fact that I'm your salvation. I'm your shield. I'm your protector. You see, what we're going to find out as we cover these different people groups is that there is a dividing line. No one is outside of God's salvation. But what you'll notice with these people groups, as well as with the Hebrew people and the descendants of Israel, is that the dividing line in the litmus test is whether or not you're going to worship the one and only true God, or are you going to go about your way into idolatry and pagan practices that are not of the Most High God. You see, for the Egyptian kingdom, still there were people who were going to be hard-headed, even after those 10 plagues brought the Egyptian kingdom down to almost nothing, who continued in their pagan practices, continued in idolatry, and became prideful about the Egyptian kingdom. There were Egyptians that continued down that path, and so God rendered a prophecy against the kingdom of Egypt. When you look at Ezekiel chapters 29, chapter 30, chapter 31, and 32, you'll see where God is prophesying against the kingdom of Egypt. And he says, I'm going to turn them into a wasteland, a desolate place. He's even going to scatter the descendants of the Egyptian kingdom all over the world. And he said that he's going to symbolically break the arm of the Pharaoh. And the reason why he says he's going to do that and make their armies weak is because whenever the kingdom of Israel, you had it split into a northern kingdom and southern kingdom. Now, whenever the Israelites went into oppression because of judgment, like when the Babylonian kingdom came in or the Syrian kingdom came in to overtake them and enslave them, a lot of Israelites would flee down into Egypt, down into Africa, because they trusted in Pharaoh to be their protector. They trusted in the Egyptian army. And God said, because y'all are doing this, I'm going to show you who is the ruler of all. Now, when I said you're going to be judged and you're going to go into oppression because you engaged in idolatry, this is what you have, the price you have to pay. And I'm going to even bring the Egyptian kingdom low. I'm going to break the arm of the Pharaoh so that his chariots and his armies you will not trust in. And he's saying this throughout Ezekiel to show the nation of Israel that you're only to trust in me and me alone. I'm the creator of the universe. You're my inheritance. You're going to trust in me and no one else and nothing on this planet. So as we can see, that's why I'm so shocked when I see some people engaging, trying to go down into the pagan practices back again of ancient Kemet or the ancient Egyptians. Because did you not see that what God prophesied in Ezekiel chapter 29 through 32, that it came to pass? The Egyptian kingdom has never been as it was before. All of the original ancient Egyptians are scattered. What you see in Egypt today are not the ancient Egyptians. These are Arab people or people of European descent. Remember, God is prophesying in Ezekiel that it's going to get invaded, the kingdom of Egypt, and it's going to be brought low. Egypt was invaded by the Babylonians. Egypt was invaded by the Greek and the Romans. And that's what you see the results of today. These are not the people who are linked DNA-wise to the Egyptian people. The ancient Egyptians are African. And God did exactly what he said he was going to do, to show and prove that his word never leaves and comes back void. It does what it says. He's not man that he would lie. So I'm telling you that as we go forth, you're going to see a continual pattern. You're going to see people that are in these different people groups that may not be Hebrews or descendants of the nation of Israel by DNA, but they're grafted in because they're the outsiders who are abiding by the same laws and standard as the nation of Israel. God said for any outsider outside of the nation of Israel that want to come in amongst you, that they have to abide by the same rules, the same laws, and they have to abide by my mitzvot. Now, to continue to prove to you that God has salvation for everyone, he doesn't want anyone to perish. Even after these judgments are given in Ezekiel, if you'll turn to Isaiah chapter 19, and in Isaiah chapter 19, specifically look at verses 19 through 22. I mean, you can read the whole chapter, but specifically Isaiah chapter 19, verses 19 through 22. God is saying that he's going to bring the Egyptian people back to him under worship of him and him alone. He's going to render them salvation and become their defender. I mean, the kingdom of Egypt was brought so low. When you read Isaiah chapter 19, it says that when the tribe of Judah was mentioned, the tribe of Judah is mentioned to the Egyptians, they were terrified and trembled. So you have a kingdom that used to subject the whole nation of Israel to slavery and servitude, to now they've brought so low to that they fear the kingdom of Judah. Every time the tribe of Judah is mentioned, they're terrified. But this is only because God humbled them, because he wanted to bring them back to salvation. God says in this scripture in Isaiah 19, verses 19 through 22, is that I'm going to be their defender. I'm going to bring to them salvation. He says he's going to heal them. He says that they are going to set up an altar in the middle of Egypt that will glorify and worship him. Now, isn't that amazing? You got a whole kingdom that was prideful and engaging in idolatry and pagan practices, that God is going to bring them to salvation. So much so that they're going to put an altar in the center of Egypt that will glorify and honor Adonai Elohim, the Most High God. So God is showing us he has salvation for everyone, and that we have to make sure that we focus on him and him alone, and the truth of his word and his mitzvot. He loves us and he doesn't want any of us to perish, Body Messiah, as I'm saying over and over again. And I'll continue to show this as we cover the descendants of Ishmael next. Well, thank you, Body Messiah, for joining me. I pray and hope that you'll be able to join me for many more lessons. Until next time, may God continuously cover you with his shalom peace. Goodbye, Body Messiah.